Hello and welcome to my trip down road testing memory lane. And before I crack on today to look through an old MCN, I just thought I'd say thanks everyone for your comments on the sports bikes. It's been overwhelming and really interesting just to really see how, people might not necessarily buy sports bikes anymore, but everyone still loves them. And sports bikes aren't dead, are they? People are still riding older sports bikes, more affordable bikes, more analog bikes. You've got new sports bikes coming along in the shape of the new ZXR 400, which would be fantastic, wouldn't it? And then you've got those middleweights, the Aprilias, the R7s and all that kind of stuff. So I'm glad that sports bikes aren't dead. But staying on that subject, talking of arse up, hands down sports bikes, I want to talk to you about one of the most successful sports bikes of the noughties, and one whose legacy really lives on. And of course that is the Triumph Daytona 675. A lot has been said and written about this bike. It was hugely popular for Triumph. It's a massive sales success. It spawned a load of race wins, racing championships at all kind of levels, from domestic to world championship. Of course, it spawned the street triple 675 and now later on the 765, and it also powers the Moto 2 grid now. Who would have ever thought that when the Daytona 675 came out in 2006, at a time when 250 Grand Prix were the feeder class for 500s, that they'd be using 4-stroke 3-cylinder 675 engines, and now 765, and not 252 strokes. You'll also remember that the 675 Daytona came out at peak Japanese supersport 600 kind of glory. 600 is really popular and it had to be Japanese. And it also came out, this bike, in the same year as the R6, and the R6 really set the bar with ride-by-wire and loads of slipper clutches, load of technology now that kind of set it in such good stead that it hasn't really changed since 2006. And in the background of when the Daytona came out, it was very hard to think how this Triumph could ever compete with the Japanese. Especially, you just had to have a Japanese 600 that was the end of, where it was a road or track, didn't you? For ultimate kudos. And then, Triumph at the time were producing things like the TT 600, the Daytona 600, Daytona 650. That didn't really cut it, even though they handled well. Well, that all changed. And we saw the fruits of Triumph's labour in MCN, January the 11th, 2006. When MCN ran their first launch report of the Daytona from Sepang. So there's lots of hype about this bike. As always, MCN would have reported the story from when it was first seen in spy shots and stuff like that. The strange thing about the Triumph at the time is that MCN didn't have a good relationship with Triumph, which is kind of at odds with people's perception of MCN. That you see people commenting that we're in the pockets of manufacturers, which could not be further from the truth. And at the time, Triumph had such a bad relationship with MCN, we weren't invited on any of their launches. We went along in a convoluted way, and most of the time Kevin Ash, God rest his soul, amazing journalist, amazing human being, and we all miss him greatly. But old Kev used to do most of the Triumph launches as a freelancer, and everyone knew they'd sell it to MCN. It was kind of a way of getting around that kind of frosty relationship. And in fact, I actually did a speed triple launch, the 1090, when that first came out, under the guise of Arena magazine, because Arena was part of EMAP as was MCN then. So and that carried on. When we had our first Daytona 675s for testing and for long-term tests, we actually had to buy it rather than it come from a press fleet like it would normally. So we went absolutely overboard with this bike to find out what made it tick. You'll see that in a minute. we sung from the rooftops of how good it was, and it was genuinely because it was a good bike. There was no skullduggery, no brown envelopes, no I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine. It was just genuinely a brilliant bike. Yeah, and that kind of highlights what our relationship is with the manufacturers. But anyway, so we looked at this story with bated breath, and it was as good as we'd imagined. Kevin Nash said that it was a beautiful bike to behold, as it's proved to be, isn't it? It's very angular, very minimalist, quite high at the back, nose down, kind of feels a little bit like a 250 to ride actually, but like a grunty 250. So it's quite apt that it's become the replacement for the 250 in Moto 2. And the kind of most significant thing he said in his test is that it's a challenger for the other 600s. And that was like, wow, it really is a challenger. He said he loved the looks, like I say, he loved the handling, he loved the brakes, he loved the sound. He was getting used to the 3-cylinder engine because the 3-cylinder kind of doesn't rev as long as a 4-cylinder. So it kind of stops early. He was just getting used to not hitting the rev limiter all the time. And he said he loved it. He said there was a few little quirks. He said the gearbox was not brilliant. He said it needed a slipper clutch because it was quite easy to get the back skipping into corners. And he said that on road settings with Kev's weight, it was too soft, but there was wiggle room to adjust it. But yeah, overall it was a really positive test. We had loads of detail shots of what made it tick. I mean, this is all so familiar now, but at the time this was amazing. And then we also asked the question in the road test, you know, how does the 675 compare to the Japanese 600s? That was the big question. And that takes us on to the next MCN, which was, when was that? This is February the 8th, so that's just over a month later. And we got to ride the 675 against its rivals. So we teamed up with Motociclismo magazine in Spain, which we had a relationship with back then. We used to do a lot of group tests with them. We did their thing called Master Bike, which was in MCM for a few years, where Motociclismo got all the manufacturers to bring their bikes along to a racetrack for a week. Got all these star riders to do lap times and everything, and they it was a knockout round, and then the Master Bike was the thing that won the whole lot. And yeah, these were the days where there was a little bit more money sloshing around in the piggy bank to do massive tests like this. So we went to Spain. They didn't have a Daytona, but we did. We had the one that we'd I don't think we'd bought this one. We managed to get this one from a dealer maybe. So we rocked up in a van with the Daytona. Motociclismo had all the bikes there. We were in Valencia. We put them all on control tyres. They were Dunlop control tyres, and we had a on-track dyno there, and we did lap times. So as it turned out, like the R6 was the bike to beat, but the Daytona, when we were riding around the track, was really, really close. So close, in fact, that the Yamaha did a 146.213 around Valencia, and the Triumph did a 146.220, which are pretty good lap times on a road bike with road compound Dunlops. I think they were sticky Dunlops anyway. And the same story was with the dyno that they had on the track. It wasn't quite the same as our dyno. We'll come on to that. But the Yamaha made 106 bhp and the Triumph made 106. The Yamaha was 0.5 bhp up actually, 106.5. So yeah, all of a sudden 2006 was the year of the Daytona and the R6, and that kind of battle continued over the years, isn't it? The rest of the bikes, which were the ZX6R, which was our 600 group test winner in 2005, the GSXR 600 K6, that would have been the K6, and the CBR 600RR, which was a few years old. They were all within a second of the Triumph and the Yamaha. But back then, in the world of supersport comparisons, you know, these things were split by tenths. So the Honda was the slowest, and all of a sudden Yeah, the Honda was a 147.13. You know, nearly a second down on the Yamaha and the Triumph. So very quickly the Honda felt very, very old. You know, we went big on this test. It even went in Australia Motorcycle News, where we got a cover out of it. And then the next week, MCN printed a little featurey test, which was all about what the Daytona 675 was like on the road. So we've ridden it at its launch in Sepang, loved it. We've ridden it around the track at Valencia and loved it. Let's get these sorted. And now we were talking about what this brand new Triumph was like in the real world, where people are actually going to ride it. So we devised a number of sort of small mini tests. We had the bike for a few weeks and we gave them to different people to do tests. So the first test we did was to give Chad, my colleague at the time, who's now a freelance journalist still at Chassis on launches. He commuted, so he lived up near York. He used to do a commute to MCN every day, which was just over 100 miles, I suppose, which is a bit of a slog for the amount of years he did it. And we asked him to live with a bike up and down the A1 basically, and he wasn't that keen, which isn't a surprise. He said the seat was uncomfortable, the screen was too low, the super coursers didn't work in the winter. So yeah, I think he's right. Time's proved it's not the best commuter bike. Then we gave it to a shorter rider, Marisa Brennan, she used to work at MCN as well. She was 5'1", and she said that the bike was way too high. I loved it for that reason, because it was tall. It wasn't sort of sat on the floor. But for shorter riders, as it's been proved, Daytona was a little bit too high. We had a courier, Richard Batten, who got to sort of courier with it for a little while. He said that the steering look was a bit restrictive. You get the bars trapped, your hands trapped between the bars and the frame. But he said it's really light and easy to ride, which it is. It was amazingly light. In fact, Triumph claimed 165 kilos dry, which is a bit of a meaningless figure, wasn't it? These were the days in 600s where all the manufacturers claimed dry weights. And with the 600s, they're all within a few kilos of each other, to the point that I heard a rumour that when the Triumph was made, I'm sure it's not true, but they basically just plonked a weight figure down as their claim figure, which was kind of sat in the middle of everybody else, whether that's true or not. And almost impossible to prove, because dry weight is no fluids at all, nothing in the forecoil, nothing in the battery, no engine oil, no fuel. So, you know, a dry weight is just a box of bits, isn't it? It's not actually a bike, so it's completely irrelevant. All the manufacturers now, Triumph included, give wet weights, which is fully fueled, ready to go, which are much more relevant. And I would imagine the Daytona, that original one with no Euro 3 or 4 gubbins, probably would have been a true mid 180 kilo bike, really light bike. Then I got to take a pillion for a little while, a lady called Kate Hunter. She was an MCN babe. These were the days where MCN babes used to go around the bike shows and stuff like that in Lycra. You know, this almost seems like the 70s by comparison when you look back at that. And also, you know, these were the days where bike magazines and car magazines had pages and pages of advertising with 0898 numbers and rude pictures. So I got to take her on the back for a little while, and she said that because it was so tall it was hard to get on and pretty cramped, which, yeah, it's a super sport bike, isn't it? It's not really a pillion bike. That pillion pad and pillion pegs are there for a little bit of as a token gesture. We gave it a carrying ability test. Couldn't really fit anything under the seat, but when you look at the picture of the seat now, it looks absolutely huge compared to tail units now. You know, the reason you can't get anything under the seat there is because there's an exhaust in the way. But yeah, you can't carry. I think the bottom line is that the Daytona isn't very practical. And then we put it under a little bit of a fun test. So we went to Bruntingthorpe Airstrip, which is near Leicester. And we used to go there a lot to do speed testing. We don't do so much now because what's the point in speed testing a GS or a KTM Super Adventure or a Tracer? Who cares how fast they go really when you look at how much it costs to do? But back in the sports bike days, performance was everything. So basically I just spent a day dicking around, backing it into corners, pulling wheelies, doing burnouts. It was really, really good fun. And then finally we put it to a public vote. And everyone, we went to a bike meeting at a local Peterborough pub, and everyone loved it. So it's just a big tick, 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 tick. And then finally we put some facts and figures to the bike. We went to BSD Engineering in Peterborough, where we go for our dyno work. Again, not so much now because, you know, I don't think power figures are important as they were in the sports bike days. We used to almost live at BSD, and Mark Bruin, who works there, who owns it, makes a mean cup of tea. So, you know, he put it on his dyno. It made 109.75 bhp at 12,300 rpm, and it made a true 49.4 foot-pound of torque, or pound-foot of torque at 10,500. And he said, Mark Brewer said he was really impressed because in the real world, at around 10,000 rpm, the Triumph makes 22 bhp more than the R6. So, and you can feel that when you ride the bikes back to back. You're not throwing gears at the Triumph. You can be more torquey with it. Bruce Dunn, who's freelance tester for us, and also our resident speed tester, because he's got all the data logging equipment. He's the right size. He's, you know, he's a smaller chap. Get tucked right in. X250 racer. You'd be hard pushed to beat him off the line, old Bruce. He data logged at 157 miles an hour. He was a little bit disappointed with that, to be honest, because all the other 600s would do over 160. The outright acceleration through the gears was about the same, but the roll-on test that we do, so we go 40 to 120 in top gear, so 40 mile an hour, and it was a lot better than the 600. So it got to 120 from 40, 2 seconds faster than a ZX6R, which is quite grunty anyway, but 3 seconds quicker than the R6. So can you imagine that when you're on the bike? There's another bike 3 seconds ahead at that speed. So, you know, the Daytona just buggers off into the distance. Same story was under braking. The Daytona's got fantastic brakes, really nicely balanced bike. It's really light, and it went from 70 to 0 about a metre or two better than its rivals. So, you know, all around, it was just, yeah, impressive. So, you know, from there, the rest is history, isn't it? Like I say, it's been a massive sales success. Even by today's standards, because the 675 didn't really change that much, you know, all the way to, I last rode one at the launch in Cartagena, the 675R, and hadn't really developed that much. I've ridden one recently, the Moto 2 edition, the 765, which was good, really, really nice, all carbon fibre fairing. But to be honest, that felt just like the 2006 bike in terms of the way it's built and everything. And, you know, things have moved on really, you know, with refinements. And, you know, when you look at BMWs and Ducatis, they're sort of much nicer made, and modern Triumphs as well. So, you know, the Daytona's kind of run its course in that respect. But it is still an amazing road bike. If you can find one, you know, if you can get one of those early ones, you can get one for as little as about £5,000. And it's still a fantastic road bike. If it's been well looked after, you know, serviced regularly and is in pretty good condition, you've got an amazing 600 that delivers all the excitement of a 600 with a little bit more grunt, you know, getting towards a 750 when it comes to grunt. Just beautiful handling, fantastic brakes. It's just, yeah, it's an amazing bike, and it's probably one of the best track day bikes you can get as well. So even if you find a scruffy one, you know, if you put rear suspension on it, fork internals, gearing, good tyres, that's going to be a fantastic track bike that will keep up with anything in the fast group, and it'll be rewarding because you're screaming the engine. It's very light, it's very easy to manage. It's not going to eat tires like 1,000. It's probably one of the best track bikes you can buy still. But just to sort of sum up how good that Daytona was back in the day, I'm going to leave you with this. So a few years later, Triumph updated the Daytona, and one of our senior editors at MCN, Guy Proctor, who's fantastic. He's a genius when it comes to magazine craft and putting magazines together. It's almost a dying trade now. But back in the 80s and 90s and early noughties, when magazines were having their heyday, you had these really incredible people crafting the magazines to make them really, really memorable. There's Guy Proctor, people like Tim Thompson from Bike Magazine, Rupert Paul from PB and Bike, Hugo Wilson, Matt Oxley, Mark Forsyth, Simon Hargreaves, all these legends that, in my opinion, motorcycle magazine legends. But anyway, Guy was running a Daytona 675 as a long-termer in 2009, and his first update in 2009 in MCN in the 22nd of April 2009, he got to ride the Tag Triumph race bike and speak to Paul Young, who Paul Young, amazing racer, won lots of races from Australia, really fast. I mean, I was on a KTM 1290 Super Duke R launch with him at Qatar, and we were going round and I was riding pretty hard and I was keeping with him, and I was thinking, oh, okay, this is pretty good. And then just at one point he just decided to flick the switch. He just disappeared off. Unbelievable. A fantastic rider. And before Guy got to ride his race bike in this report, he spoke to him about the first time that Paul Young saw the Daytona 675, which is in Almeria in 2004. So you think Triumph were working on that bike in the same year where 600s absolutely exploded. You had the ZX6R with the upside down forks and all the rest of it. So let me read a little quote for him. He says, "They just wheeled this thing out of the truck. I watched one of the other test riders do a couple of fast laps and it looked great, sounded fantastic, and was obviously going brilliant. The guys are all really enthusiastic, but I had to ask them if it was actually a Triumph. Right from that moment, I knew I had to race it." So he was gobsmacked, and he got to develop it, and he was so convinced that it would make a great race bike. He took it upon himself. Triumph had stopped having an official 600 team. As you know, they won a race with Craig Jones, sadly departed. So he actually developed the Daytona as a race bike. He got his own parts made and machined, and thanks to his input, his team won a British Super Sport Championship. And that bike's just gone from strength to strength. It's a shame. I'd love Triumph to make a Daytona 765, but a thoroughly modern one. Not necessarily with a load of electronics, because I don't really think this bike needs it. That's one of the appeals. If you were to get one of these now, it wouldn't have ABS, it wouldn't have traction control, wouldn't have wheelie control, and it wouldn't matter either, because it's such a grippy, easy to manage, beautiful handling motorcycle. Obviously they'd have to put all that on now, but if you had a modern day 765 Daytona, maybe you made it a little bit physically bigger, because that's one of the things in everybody's sports bike comments, and I think the same. Why can't they make an R1 that's slightly bigger, that we all fit on? Why can't they make a Fireblade that isn't made for a Japanese test rider? We're all bigger. So if Triumph made a little bit of a bigger Daytona, didn't do anything to the engine, because that engine's amazing, had great brakes, stick great tyres on it, it'd be amazing, wouldn't it? Well, on that note, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed that blast from the past. I think looking through a load of the pile of MCNs recently, where I get these from, I've seen a couple of really good ones. So I'll make videos on those in the coming months and do more Q&A videos as well. So keep those questions coming in. I love them, and I'll see you soon.